So, welcome everybody. My name is Clara de Beljac.
And I'm Dominique Vrabic-Dejman.
It's Thursday, November 8th, 7 p.m. And yeah, so Dominic is an information designer and media scholar. Across technological innovation to the politics of interference design, Dominic is interested in how visibility is manufactured.
Thank you. And Clara is a Ljubljana-based artist and researcher investigating cyber gentrification and speculative infrastructures. Thank you for joining us tonight in this live broadcast. We are your news anchors who are going to be on the script and off the script. And we're here in the studio tonight, also joined by co-founders Tommaso Campagna and Jordi Viader Guerrero, the conceptual and technical backbone of The Void. They'll be facilitating this experience today. The Void is an Amsterdam-based tactical media lab which facilitates alternative media spaces in the form of hybrid pop-up studios, such as this one here, giving space to artists, designers, researchers, and activists, representing renegade perspectives and facilitating urgent discourse. So I will give the word and a warm introduction to Tommaso and Jordi.
Thank you. Maybe for the online audience. Yes. Hello. I'm Tommaso, and I'm now on stage alone, but actually I'm part of a collective in which also Jordi Viader Guerrero is part of, but is on the other side of the camera. I cannot totally. Maybe he can show himself, and I'm gonna put it. Yes. Here Jordi is, and yes, we are part of a institute of research, Institute of Network Cultures, based in Amsterdam. And what we do is to try to do publishing in a bit of a different way. We decided to start to give a platform for artistic research publishing and try to use audiovisual to do that for all that content that cannot be printed on paper. And to do that, we do it in hybrid spaces through a hybrid event with both online and offline audience. I have in front of me a big crowd. I'm doing this for the online audience that cannot see you. What we think we would like to do with this project is to conceptualize or like try to bring back this idea of tactical media, how to use media in a different way. And first things we thought is to try to like flip the logic of the events where there is someone on stage and then there is a technician in the back. And in this case, we decided to put the technician on stage and to embrace the fact that we are, at the end of the day, also a technician and we really need this part. And at the same time, we also decided to embrace the fact that not everything is going to go all right. Things are going to be glitchy. We use green screen in a very like noisy way, and things might not go as they were planned. And the whole idea is that I and Jordi will be here trying to fix it. So there is not going to be this awkward silence where you're looking in the back trying to find the person fixing it, but it's part of the show. So I'm not going to speak more than this, but what I will say is just embrace the glitch, embrace the fact that it's not going to look perfectly neat, but at the same time try to get the content out of the cleanness of the video. And said that, I'm going to give the word back to you, and thank you so much again for curating this.
Thank you, Tommaso and Jordi, for being here. And thank you all of you for joining us tonight as well. This is the first edition of the Void Discursive program at Pixxelpoint, and we're going to be joined by a panel of participating artists whose work you can also see in the different venues. And this panel talk is called Eroding Boundaries, Temporal and Spatial Decay in a World Beyond Repair. So as we gather here today in this metaphysical green screen universe, protected from the influences of time and space, we've invited a series of intriguing participants, artists whose work you can experience, well, I've said that, but yes. And we're going to be diving deeper in two separate parts. So the first part has to do with sort of spatial augmentation, and the second part has to do with temporal decay. So more details coming up soon.
The world is decaying quickly. Large profit-driven actors are fundamentally reshaping how our physical and digital dwellings take shape, and how we take shape in our dwellings. Erratic investments, driven by predictive financial logics, are attempting to merge our physical and digital realities. Yes. Big tech platforms are feeding every interaction we have into predictive algorithms, which shape not only what we see, but also how we move, feel, and act. We're increasingly entangled in systems that predict our next move. From search engines suggesting our next thoughts, to Google Maps showing us familiar spaces as if we don't already know them, to dating apps serving us matches we already knew we would hate. We're separated and guided to reconnect on paths where someone else's profit can be made.
Beyond the screen, growing speculative investments are spilling over into the physical world as they redraw our borders and reconfigure our histories. From the Israeli AI-driven drone warfare and target evaluation system Lavender, to the hyper-real renderings of architectural projects in Gaza.
Cue image.
To Tesla's flopped underground tunnels, to Instagram driving the design of public space, borders are being imposed and reimposed.
The relentless pursuit for techno-profit, masked as innovation, creeps and molds our present and future realities. And despite all the glowing promises, innovation wanes quickly. The next big thing is already forgotten, replaced by another, leaving behind traces of media artifacts, products, interfaces, and virtual experiences that never fully realized their potential. We're surrounded by these abandoned futures, lagging endlessly, hopelessly, behind the impossible pace of techno-capitalist innovation. So here we are, in the shadow of the apocalypse, making a home in the rubble of the new, pushing on from within the unrealized. The technologies we rely on, the screens that absorb us, the models shaping our choices, these don't merely hint in the future. They pull us towards a horizon that fades and crumbles, decays, if you will, as we approach. And in their wake, we're left with the lingering weight of abandoned promises and investments. Yet we carry on. So when we consider space and time, it's, I think, really good to think that they aren't simply separate realms. They're deeply intertwined, constantly influencing and shaping each other, laying the foundations of our perception of reality. So tonight, we delve deeper into their tangled webs, inviting our guests to share insights on how their works employ decay, augmentation, and transformation to speculatively mirror and diffract our own experiences.
So I think it's important to acknowledge that space isn't just like a physical reality. It's deeply influenced by social, political, and economic forces that reshape how we experience it. So our discussion will explore the topic of space, and we'll be joined by representatives of Room 69 and Omsk Social Club to explore how these collectives are crafting alternative infrastructural imaginaries that attempt to open up new spaces of possibility. Their hybrid spatial interventions find ways of building bridges between the tangible and the speculative. They augment and shift existing techno-social infrastructures through spatial interventions, and thus doing kind of grow nodes of autonomous and subversive alternative realities.
So, meanwhile, time leaves its mark, giving things a past and a future, Media, in particular, creates and shapes our perceptions of time, whether through news narratives, images, videos, or technological artifacts. These media forms take our subjective perception of time and externalize it. They encode it into objective containers, collapsing, looping, and reflecting time back to us, as if through magic. Different media artifacts embody time differently, reciprocally shaping our own perceptions and turning digital spaces into glitching portals towards paths not taken. So, what all media objects have in common is their ability to be inefficient and break down, something we don't normally hear about. Structures are constantly in flux, crumbling, transforming, even as capitalist innovation urges us to believe that they're smooth and linear, that time must move relentlessly forward, accelerating towards a seamless merging of the physical and the digital, as the metaverse creators would have us believe. So decay, glitching, unpredictable loopings, this really bridges space and time and resists extractivist logics of capitalist innovation and becomes far more than just mere degradation. Like, decay is a productive force. So in our discussion on time, I'll be joined by artists Alberto Jares and Dorian Shishko, probing media archaeology at the borders and exploring digital paths that remain untaken. We'll look at how their work taps into the concept of technological decay, turning obsolescence and the remnants of digital futures into new forms of creation and exploration. Intervening in their midst, a digital physical spatio-temporal intervention by Mario Santamaria. More info coming soon.
So in a horizon that feels like it's closing, we're going to explore, what it means to break things open. So this program is really dedicated towards seeking out new spaces to open up and expand. And we're just sort of investigating, is it a very far stretch to think of a casual conversation as a space of resistance, a space where the gaze is redirected and our surroundings are reconsidered? Can a simple video installation really change the way we imagine together, or a sound piece affect the way that we perceive? We'll be thinking of erosion of temporal and spatial boundaries as a productive force, as we said, one that allows for new ways of perceiving innovation through decomposition and augmentation. So we're kind of examining what does it mean to stay with this uncertainty, to dwell in the spaces of decay, and take them somewhere new. So we hope you enjoy the program that we've prepared, and let's jump straight into it now.
Ooh. So,
yes, sure. I would like to invite our first panelists on stage in this part one, which is kind of working with spatial augmentation. I would like to just invite the members and representative of Omsk Social Club, which is joining us today, as well as Maxi and Roman, who are the representatives of Room 69, to join me on stage now. And we're just going to dive right into this sort of spatial augmentation section. So earlier I spoke about how important it is to think of space and spatial infrastructures as more than just a physical reality. Welcome, welcome. As more than just a physical reality, these concepts deeply reflect social, political, and economic forces that reshape how we experience life. They influence how we move around urban and digital spaces and who we have contact with, often functioning as webs of control. But I think what I'm interested in, and why I invited these honorable guests tonight, is because I'm interested in how this direction of causality can be flipped, basically, and how then hybrid spatial softwares can also affect how we provide alternative access to and distribution of information, thus affecting reality from the other side, sort of. We can perceive spatial augmentations as spaces of possibility that have actually a future generative force, and craft alternative infrastructural imaginaries in process, loosening and molding these webs of control into new forms. So I hope that wasn't too like congested, but essentially like the point is like, okay, why are the invited artists like working with spatial softwares, and like what do we hope to achieve with this with these sort of installations and spatial augmentations, and are there actually possibilities of affecting our capabilities of imagination and our capabilities of imagining different realities? So yeah, I'll just do like a quick introduction of my guests, our guests, and hopefully you've already encountered some of their installations in the guided tours, but if not, that's also fine. So basically here we have Maxi and Roman. Maxi, Roman, welcome. They're two members who are representing a sort of like quite a big 8-member collective of artists, curators, producers, and researchers. They're based in Vienna, and they explore the intersection of artificial and natural worlds, reflecting on socio-cultural context and hyperconnectivity. We have a representative of Omsk Social Club as well present. Welcome. And Omsk Social Club is a sprawling Berlin-based collective whose artistic practice takes the form of a specific methodology that they call real gameplay. So real gameplay is collective immersion and speculative worlding. So from these live iterations, media relics are harvested, such as films, scripts, and large-scale installations, invoking states and gateways that could potentially be a fiction or a yet unlived reality. Thank you for bearing with me through these introductions. I would also like to sort of mention Vidko Prushik, who will also be present during the spatial augmentation section. In a visual capacity, we'll be able to, in about 20 minutes, we'll see a sort of extended version of his installation, Swarm Entry. And Vidko Prushik is a new media artist whose practice involves design and the interweaving of painting and sculpting technologies. He's interested in the intersection of and the parallels between digital spaces and physical objects, which he contextualizes and expands using digital technologies and principles of fictioning. Okay, I'm sorry. Now this was it with the reading. Now we're gonna go to like casual conversation. Obviously, through these introductions, you can also see a little bit why these participants were invited. They're all working with using spatial softwares to sort of like play with the boundaries between the physical reality and some speculative worlds, and they do this through different types of portals, kind of. So we will be exploring this stuff. Now, yeah, again, thank you so much for joining and bearing with me through this intro. And what I thought was really interesting in the conversations that we had before today's evening was that both of these collectives sort of mentioned to me the idea of squatting, not like squatting as we perceive it and like taking an abandoned building and like working autonomously from it, but in like a sort of different metaphysical space. So the Omsk Social Club representative mentioned that their work with real live gameplay works with sort of squatting reality. And this term was like independently reflected when you shared with me, actually Maxi shared with me that Room 69 works with squatting the digital sphere or cyberspace. So I want to invite you to sort of like expand a little bit upon this concept of, on the one hand, squatting reality, on the other hand, squatting digital space. You can refer to the artworks that you're exhibiting here, and just a little bit expand upon this concept of squatting reality and the digital sphere. We're just going to be passing. Oh, yeah.
Hi. So we, with Room 69, started this project a few years ago where we use basically Google Maps and Google Street View as a space for artworks for virtual worlds. And since Google Street View kind of relies on user-generated data, it expects like those pictures with food at restaurants or sites. And we kind of thought that we can create our own spaces on top of these realities. I think it's shown in the background in a video. So basically, in one of the projects, we 3D scanned a port, also a harbor, and through these artifacts that create in 3D scanning, it kind of resembles reality, but it also distorts its reality with our added artifacts. And on the one hand, Google Maps is interesting because you're not expecting to see something out of this reality. And but also a lot of people are already used to this interface. So it's like, it's quite intuitive for people, but it's also like unexpected to use this as a platform.
And the thing I would like to add to this is, just so you also can picture it a little bit better, that this distinction you drew, that it's not like squatting in the real world. There's like a more or less funny anecdote to it, that how it started was really close to how squatting works in the real world. Because the first Google Maps show that we did was an abandoned physical building that we 3D scanned from the inside and then put an exhibition into this 3D scan. Then you could like actually walk into this abandoned building in Google Maps and have a look at this exhibition that was in there. And this worked well enough that people in the comments were asking if they can go there and actually look at this weird-ass exhibition that was obviously a 3D scan. So so that was actually quite close to the actual, that was the closest one. Then later it kind of diverged a little bit and wasn't as close anymore, but it is, at least in that instance, it was actually very, very close to the analog way of squatting a building, that is to kind of repurposing it for your own while you can't have access. We actually had to break into that building to do it, so that was close enough, basically.
Yeah, I think in a sense, or like working with this metaphor of squatting reality that you propose, Social Grab works with a methodology since like 2017 called Real Gameplay, which basically utilizes the mechanics of live action roleplay, LARP, and also I would say probably kind of autonomous groupings in the way that they use decentralized collective organizational methods to pertain different sort of indicators or methodologies of hacking the political system as we know it. And the idea behind Real Gameplay is, but something that actually, believe it or not, is probably still sort of forming and mutating, which I guess is also why we continue with the medium. But the idea is to sort of question who has the authority to make reality, who gets to pertain the characters that we play in reality, and who is the sort of author of those realities. And what I think has become kind of quite demonstrable by the technique of using role play is the way we use it. We often go from full-on immersion pieces, which typically kind of take the technique of a workshop prior, which is usually around 8-9 hours, and then we go into play, and then it's usually around 72 hours non-stop play, to 58 days was the longest one that we did. And it's quite amazing what happens when a group of people consent to the vulnerability of creating a world out of their kind of collective imagineering that spreads over time and space, and of course in itself decays and grows and breaks and re-references itself. And I think that what we often try to do with these works is to answer question. And so typically the way in which the works are structured is by engaging with a story that tests the parameters of something that is already here in our consensual reality, but looking at the different kind of dynamics, surfaces and textures, and then seeing how far you can push and pull this narrative together. Whether or not it turns out in the end with answers, probably not, but it certainly builds on one's kind of embodied knowledge through participatory design systems to build these large-scale imaginariums. And I think what's also kind of important is that you begin to be able to testbed things that you want to leave inside that world and things that you want to pull out and bring into this one. And I guess at the end of the day, it's about asking the questions of like, how many people does it take to have an alternative collective hallucination or role play to really disturb and crack the existing consensual reality we play in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your answers. I think if we're like, as I would sort of process the information now that you gave me, is that you're kind of trying to, like augment and like repurpose the way that we perceive this realm that we're kind of now in. I would kind of, like, I think it's easier to perceive like the realm of reality and this speculative realm as like two separate spaces, although you can kind of definitely talk about how they influence each other, and that's what we're sort of trying to address today. But I wonder if in these like experiences that you facilitate, actually, both of these collectives experience a type of, facilitate a type of experience, like you're sort of building a portal from like one world into another world in some way, and trying to like find ways that translate these different realities and kind of transmute them. So I would like to then focus now on these like sort of artifacts that get left behind or that get produced during this translation process through the portal from the one realm to the other and back again. Could you maybe like expand more about how these like digital and analog artifacts, like what are they that get produced during the processes that you facilitate, and maybe like how do they affect these like alternative infrastructural imaginaries? Was that like super like not understandable? Yeah? Basically, like, basically just to focus kind of on the media artifacts and analog artifacts that get produced in these translation processes. Yeah? Okay. Whoever wants to.
Yeah, for us it's really interesting with all, we're using a lot of digital processes, and through these digital processes, the information gets lost or new information gets created that in this like gets sometimes exaggerated, and sometimes we also purposely focus on it, like for example on the holes in the building, on the vastness of space that's like glitched. It's still like represents a certain reality or like an anchor to reality, which we also try to in our physical exhibitions have, like having kind of the virtual world anchored in this reality through certain elements in the exhibition. Like right now what we're showing at Pixxelpoint, it has this entry point into like this digital world, which is still like anchored in this reality through like the structure we built around this, the choreography of visiting and looking at the different screens and worlds. And yeah, how to anchor them kind of together of both spaces.
So within Social Club, because we mostly practice within like the contemporary fine art institutional setting mostly, quite often what kind of comes out are these kind of relics that often take a kind of mixed media approach, which is specifically and conceptually positioned per piece, so per world. In the case, I think it's easier maybe to speak about the case that we can see here at Pixxelpoint, but in the past we've also like written books out of the worlds, or sound pieces have come out, and some worlds aren't documented at all. And it really also has to resonate with the story, why an artifact could be pulled out of it. And so within Pixxelpoint this year, we're showing a work called Tomb, and this is in essence a auto-fictional documentary. So there is 5 people who are living within a community, and their days are mapped and through independent filmmaking team who come to visit them and basically have the ability to try to construct some sort of like reference to their political and personal set of beliefs to which they practice their daily work. In a certain sense, and this also sits within a larger exhibition installation, which has a series of symbolic elements that transcribe both the role-played language and also things that were created, like the asemic writing that resonates around the tomb was actually created inside the role-play and is pulled out. So every single unit has a divisive nature, a sort of lore actually, which we of course do not have time to unpack right now. But I think also what has always kind of enchanted me with this way of working is that you have absolutely no idea what you're gonna come out with. Like, you have no idea what's gonna unfold over those days. And you also cannot break. It's not like a kind of traditional methodology of filmmaking where you can be like, oh, cut, or oh, could we get that again, or it has to keep rolling. And often the characters are quite antagonistic even to what it means to have their data captured and have their conversation captured, and often there's a certain level of maybe conspiratorial narrative running through. So it's also really kind of left up to the spirit of that world, which I think is also has a certain simulacra to what we find in our own everyday reality as well. And that then often resonates in these kind of fixed positions that are presented. And this sort of works with in a certain way to broker these narratives and worldings to larger audiences. Because, of course, to ask most audience members to give up their lives for 4 days, that's rather a large feat to ask, especially in today's attention economy. But actually, really beautifully, this summer in Ljubljana, we managed to convince 30 people to do that within a publicly hosted program called Aria, where we role-played for 5 days in the forest here for a World's End hackathon. So there is moments that we do manage as well to publicly facilitate these spaces.
Thank you very much. I actually had the honor to experience a LARPing session that was last year as part of ARIA, and I must say it did like very much affect the way I perceive like these different levels of reality, and that's probably one of the reasons why I also got more interested in like how, like what are the methods that you can kind of glitch our perceptions. With that, I would like to say that we're sort of coming to the end of our first section, where we try to a little bit lay the scene about like why we're talking about the things that we're talking about and what drives the work of these invited collectives. And I would like to kind of introduce you to to Vidko Priušek's visualization for the next 5 minutes. And we will just kind of drink some water. In the meantime, if you have to go to the bathroom or whatever, feel free. But yeah, join us again in 5 minutes to sort of go deeper into what we've been talking about. Thank you.
I think I will then. I have like a big jacket, and I think I will then like eclipse you, so I can manage.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Hello.
4 5 6.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I see a lot of people literally left the space, so thank you, you guys who stayed here. Hopefully they're just having cigarettes and like a long bathroom sessions, and we'll be back. But regardless, we are gonna charge forward. So welcome back, visitors. Welcome back, participants.
Hi, everybody.
So I think like now I would like to just return a little bit to this like thing that we were talking about at the beginning, the squatting of reality, the squatting of space or cyberspace. Thankfully, we have Roman here who actually has a background in neuroscience, which is maybe going to be practical with this question, which is like, okay, like now we've been talking a lot about like kind of art talky a lot, but I'm actually curious, like, okay, like how does actually processing like cyberspace and urban space and the augmentation or like changes in these things, like can it actually affect our realities? Like does it actually affect like how we perceive like the future or like whatever? Can you talk a little bit about like from a more maybe neural or like cognitive and neurological backgrounds, like how do space and reality co-determine?
I didn't see that one coming, so that might be a little bit confusing now what I'm going to say. So I think the short answer is yes, everything that we expose ourselves to will definitely change our reality. Then already the term reality is a little bit crooked because like the reality the reality just happens in the interpretation of us of what we get in our senses. So really the reality is very much subjective, and how we do that is actually a probabilistic process. So anything you learn, anything you perceive through like everything that you perceive in a sensory way will affect how you then later on perceive stuff. So if you subject yourself more to like these changed realities of the digital world or whatever, that will directly influence how you later on perceive anything else. So basically, it's a numbers game. You create your reality based on probabilistic expectations from the past that you've learned, and they help you interpret any kinds of sensory signals that come to you. So I can't say how, obviously, but the short answer would be yes, very much. If we subject ourselves to these changed spaces, to the digital realm more and more and more, this will directly lead to different interpretations of reality by us, by our sensory organs, even on the sensory level that is subconscious, and therefore to the reality, because that's just the interpretation. That's just the end product of the interpretation anyways. So I don't know, did that help at all? I'm not sure if I could break it down enough.
Certainly it did help. I mean, thank you so much for your answer. So in this way, we can say that like exposing ourselves to the sort of like spatial software and like sort of like different or like installations that try to affect the way that we perceive space and reality will have an effect on us, and will be able to in some way open up these new possibility spaces and kind of work towards like solving this crisis of imagination, crisis of ecology, crisis of capitalism that we're kind of facing, that these things are sort of all linked together in some way, opening like new possible pathways, like neural pathways, literally. Okay.
I don't want to say anything too much on that topic because I feel like as soon as I'm speaking as from the science perspective, that everything is like kind of true, and then it gets more complicated. So so sorry if that's just not. I can't. I don't know how to better answer that.
No, that's totally fine. Penny, do you have anything to say to this like kind of possibility spaces thing?
Speaking not as a scientist, I can go wild. I would dare to say that if I understand it correctly as well, that the way that we interact and move and shift through this world, there is no possibility that we can consciously take it in as real time and space. So we have to have a certain set of experiences, because our inner self would be completely overwhelmed if we had to make that amount of decisions and choices through the dynamics of just being in existence with the world. So we do have to rely on experiences and knowledge to create pathways in order for us to live in somewhat of a state beyond like jelly. Is that right? Which from kind of a socio-political position, that would probably, I think, give a good argument for why we should also put our bodies into proactive spaces of beginning to retrain ourselves through embodied experiences on how to actually make decisions. Because I think that what we see time and time again from large governance systems, both globally and locally, is that the way in which communities and localities and individuals have been stripped of their ability to manifest and imagine, and have been often from the schooling system onwards, that their imaginations have often been kind of encased or put to a sort of a sedated state. And I think although of course in essence the arts is totally riddled with problems, mostly because at a certain moment it became a kind of elite force and a space of entertainment. But like way back in the day, actually, like art was up there with science. It was also a societal space to problem solve. And I think that in a certain way, what I see often with especially with the peers that I work with, and also through a lot of artists' work that I've been introduced to here at the festival for the first time, is that very strong persistence to continually present art as a problem-solving tool, and not a tool that necessarily has a certain agenda or a certain proposition of structure, but one that actually cultivates a dialogue with the viewer. And I think that this is the kind of radical potential of maybe kind of like hustling through art to become maybe kind of a new imaginarium tool again, to open new bodily responses for future questions.
Damn, thank you for that. I think that like answer, or like all of these answers kind of like frame, the reason why we're all here together today. And yeah, sort of along that line of thinking, I would be curious in like the role of viewers or participants in the artworks that or experiences that you facilitate. So, how essential is the participatory aspect in your work? I know that, you have a lot of projects working with Google Maps. Like, are people able to generate like parts of the exhibitions, or no? Like, can you delve into the sort of the generative role of viewers, kind of, obviously in real gameplay and LARPing. the participatory aspect is also very important. So I would be also curious, like, you do facilitate experiences that people can join in, or is it mostly just, you know, members of the collective who are sort of stiffening up these alternative realities through spatial software and experiences? So yeah, let's just a little bit delve into the kind of position, role of the viewer in a participatory capacity. Yeah.
So I think for us it's more about this communal kind of experience that's like less participatory, but more like, because our spaces are kind of transcending to virtual spaces, offering this like as a transcendence, to have like also kind of this online spaces anchored in real reality. For the Google Maps shows, for example, I think it's a bit of a framework, because like everybody can upload it, and at the beginning we also thought about doing workshops and like actually a manual for virtual squatting, where we could like give it away as a tool for anybody that wants to go up there. In our own works, it's rarely participative in the real sense, although we are sometimes working with like basically interactive things, but it's more experience-able.
I feel like that the last thing that Maxi said is really important. That context, that the participation is really just like in you going into the spaces and experience them to and therefore kind of also circling back to the previous one of how it alters your reality by experiencing those 3D worlds we kind of put out there. I feel like therefore you're participating in this process of getting the cyber world and the analog world closer together. I feel like that's also something that we do as a collective, that we always, or not always, but we tend to have like a physical space and we tend to have like a digital 3D space. And by altering them in certain ways, we try to get them kind of closer together. If you picture the cyber world as like this second reality that we are constantly in, that is interwoven in our life, then I would consider this world to be quite abstract. Like if we all hang out in the same Google form, that's just a pretty abstract way of hanging out together. And the way that we then provide some sort of a 3D space that you can navigate through more like you would as a 3D being in a 3D space in like the analog world. And on the other side, we provide these analog spaces like the gallery here, and kind of make them a little bit similar so they mirror each other. And that, in my experience, in my opinion, kind of gets these worlds closer together. And you, by experiencing it actively, I feel like that's the participatory aspect, where you work on changing your perception of the digital world to really make it more tangible. You make it more conscious. You make it you move the digital world rather into a actual tangible world that works like the world we know it, a little bit like this. And I feel like that is the participation. That is where you get closer to like this idea of not unified, but like a portal, or the idea of this parallel instances of worlds. So basically, to keep it short, we're trying to get them as closer together as possible, those two worlds, and the participatory aspect is experience them, go there, experience them as we kind of build them, and then hopefully it will change, or hopefully maybe it might change your perception of the digital and the physical into a more unified thing that I would argue already exists. This just kind of makes it tangible, yeah. So participation through experience, kind of. Just because the answer before was so stupid.
So I feel like there's so many different ways that I could answer this question. Of course, the participation, there wouldn't be any work without, the participation as perception. But I would also like to kind of argue that I think every cultural artifact resonates in a certain set of parameters of participation. I often think about, kind of models of gossip, even of when somebody has participated in something or experienced something, and like actually often when they reminisce, like the kind of folklore obscurity of their own interpretation. Like this is also, again, another form of participation. And I love this kind of ontology aspect of it. I think also personally, I've like never done anything alone. I like grew up around the like free party scene in the UK, and also like in Berlin through the house projects and activist groups. So for me, like even the idea of not doing something that kind of collectively resonates, that feels like a kind of alien concept to me, because I'm so thoroughly convinced in the methodology of like horizontal organization strategies. That I feel like, this kind of need to energetically keep positioning and like performing this call and response around, both active peers that are there with you, but similarly, even through this notion of like citation, I think it's also incredibly important to cite the participation that we have with peers as well. And I think through citation, we begin to build a kind of active history of the world makers that we want to present and we want to bring forward. So for me, I can't even think of anything that would be facilitated without. I don't know, it feels like a kind of impotent idea for me. I'm so lonely with that.
Okay, thank you again for kind of elucidating all of your perspectives. And we're nearing, we are unfortunately at the end of the segment dealing with spatial augmentation. So again, I would like to thank you for being here, and it has been a really informative conversation to me, even beyond my wildest dreams in some way. So thank you so much. Thank you, again, all of the participants here who are helping us generate different perspectives and realities. I just want to focus in on what we were doing, which is at the beginning, Dominic and I were introducing how temporal and spatial augmentation and decay from above affects our realities. And as I said, now we were flipping the narrative and seeing how the direction of this causality is reversed, and how, from the bottom, as makers and talkers and participants, we can also affect our perceptions and the world that we co-construct together. So I think that was the purpose of this conversation. And again, thank you, everyone. Now we actually have a 30-minute pause where we would like to welcome MSN GF, a musician who will have a live performance now for the next 30 minutes. So this is maybe not a time then to go chat and and smoke, because it is in fact a performance for the next 30 minutes, and then we will have our time segment with Dominic.
Yeah, so I think maybe, I don't know, a round of applause for space. And we'll be welcoming Mostovna. And if you're excited for space, I know I was, just wait till we get into time. So see you in 30 minutes, and stay tuned or come back.